Hello, everybody. Welcome to Step Into the Portal. This is a special interview. My name is the Brandt, and I am here with Logan Giannini.
Hey, everybody.
Giannini. Did I get it right?
Giannini. You guys
Giannini.
like,
there you go.
Pronounced 50% with the hand.
Ironically, I'm near New York, where the Italians tend to more be, and you're in the Midwest, where the Swedes tend to more be. So
we did the flip-flop. I mean, my dad's from the East Coast. Like, he grew up in Philly, but then he met my mom in California, and then we landed in the middle. So go figure.
Nice. All right. Logan works for Chip Theory Games and has a designer credit on one of their recent titles, Hoplomacus Victorum. Is that correct, Logan?
Yes, that is me. I came on, it's funny, I came on technically as a developer. So this was back, I was working full-time in the escape room industry. I was basically running an escape room business here in the Twin Cities that I had helped design, helped open. I wasn't an owner, but I basically did everything there. And I knew some of the guys at Chip Theory. I was very friendly with them. And, you know, I've done game design for a long time. And so Victorum was kind of happening, but happening in the background. So they brought me on to help develop it. And it just kind of spiraled from there. I was working very closely with Adam Carlson, who was kind of the lead designer on it. And it very quickly turned from develop to help design. And I'm very enthusiastic and like, oh, go, 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 let's do this. And kind of ran with it as much as they would let me. And they were great. They were like, hey, you're enthusiastic. You're doing good work. Good, keep doing that. Which is nice because they would have been within their rights to say, slow down, too much. You're overstepping. Right. And instead they're like, yeah, more. And COVID helped because eventually the escape room got shut down, but that all kind of spiraled into my joining Chip Theory full-time as a designer and developer.
Nice. So is that your actual title with Chip Theory Games? Developer?
Designer/developer.
Developer.
Yep.
Nice. And when did you start working at Chip Theory?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. Does time have any meaning anymore?
True. Pre-COVID or post-COVID?
I want to say it was 2020.
Okay.
I honestly, it blurs together so much because I started, I want to say around June of 2020, part-time, kind of 20 hours a week working on Victorum.
Yeah.
And then COVID shut down. It had kind of shut down and opened up, shut down and opened up. You remember how that went.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, the owners of the escape room during one of the shutdowns was like, yeah, we're just going to let you go. We can't pay you anymore. And so around the end of the year, Chip Theory was like, yeah, come on full-time. And I guess 2.5-ish years sounds about right.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. I wish I could be exact, but honestly, it just...
totally blurs. It makes sense. All right. Well, before we jump into all Victorum, I just want people to know some of the games that you enjoy playing, that you play outside of designing. And I'll give you a hint here. One of them you have to say is Marvel Champion.
Okay, so my least favorite game in the world. No, it's funny actually. My tastes, I think, surprise people when they're like, "Oh, you design for Chip Theory, you must like these big, sprawling, like really complex." And I do, but they're not most of what I play in my free time. They're not where I came from. So my background, I guess, I grew up playing a lot of abstract strategy. Like I love a very simple rule set with really deep strategy that you can just drill down on. So games like Quarto, if you've ever played that, or basically things where people would look and go, this is in the chess family, not chess, but things where you're going, hey, easy to learn, but there's a lot going on under the surface. So
GIP and all those ones, did you play those ones?
Which
whole series? Like GIP? Yeah.
I played those a bunch. They're not necessarily, a couple of them are my favorites. I think Zertz I really liked. I really liked. But I think the Zizimik games like Quarto, Pylos, Corridor, Squadro is a fairly good recent one. I'm forgetting one. It's over on my shelf. Quantic. Quantic is a really cool one for recent years. They all have those kind of weird names that don't tell you very much. But but I like abstract strategy a lot. But to what you mentioned, when COVID started and I was home a lot, there were two games that I played a ton. The first was Cloudspire, which this was before I worked for Chip Theory, actually.
Gotcha.
But Cloudspire is probably, and it's funny because I didn't work on it at all, Cloudspire is probably my favorite Chip Theory game to play. It's this big, epic, I don't even know exactly how to describe it. It's got some
tower defense?
Not exactly. Like, I feel like that sells it short. You have this giant map, and yes, you're building a squad and sending it out to attack the opponent's fortress and vice versa. There's a little tower defense in there. There's a little kind of MOBA going on, but really it's its own unique thing. And the solo mode in it blew me away. And it took me being home with nothing else to do to really dig into it. But the solo mode on that is phenomenal. But it is big and crunchy and a mental drain. So at the same time, I was hearing a lot about this thing called Marvel Champions. It had just come out. Everybody was raving about it. I was skeptical. I don't know. I'm not sure what it was that had me skeptical, if I'm being honest. I just was skeptical, but I had some store credit. I went, I picked up a copy, and I've been kind of obsessed with that one ever since. I as you well know, I own all of it now. I make my own custom playmats. I kind of adore Marvel Champions. It's just the perfect weight, I guess. Like, I'm going to sit down. I don't have to think too hard, but if I want to, I can think extra hard. I can really try and make a funky deck work. I can take on an extra hard villain. Like, it has that flexibility that I really like. So it's probably the game I've played the most of over the last 3 years.
Awesome. Yeah, it really thrives on variety. It's just so good at that. Like you said, if I want a challenge, I can play a hero that tends to, rise to that. If I don't want a challenge, I want a fun romp, I can pick something, in the other vein, and I can just go, right?
Yeah, it's like you can only lose so many times before you just break out Doctor Strange and mop the floor with Ronan.
Nice. Awesome. All right. So tell us about Hoplomacus Victorum. So I believe, if I'm correct, Hoplomacus, no Victorum, was the first title from Chip Theory Games?
Yeah, so if memory serves, it was Hoplomacus The Lost Cities was the very first game they put out. At that point, it was Josh Carlson and Adam Carlson, the two cousins who own and run the company. And, they both had their own full-time jobs. This was, a dream in the back of their head, like, hey, we want to make this cool gladiator game. Guerrilla marketing, like they love to tell stories about being at Gen Con in the Skyways, just like trying to talk to people, like, hey, do you want to take a look at this thing? Because they didn't have a table space or anything like that at that point. And it funded, it did fine. And so they kind of kept up with Hoplo for a little bit. They did, and I forget the exact order. I want to say it was The Lost Cities first. I think it was Rise of Rome second. And then Origins, which is kind of their small box that probably shares the most DNA with Victorum, third.
And is that the one that introduced solo mode? Or did it have solo mode all the way through?
It was there from the start. Hoplo was always kind of a buffet of gameplay modes. Like, there was always, hey, here's solo, hey, here's PvP, here's this co-op mode. And I think that was part of what resonated with people. Was it was a little bit messy, but at the same time, it had something for everyone, and it didn't sell solo mode short. Solo mode was kind of where it shined, and this was at a time where most games didn't have solo modes, or they were attacked on afterthought, or a PDF on BGG, like, oh, I guess you can play solo if you want to do this.
I best remember it. I remember playing it as a draft. So like we would play PvP and we would draft the fighters, the gladiators for the arena. And then I don't think I got into it when it was originally out. I can't remember what year. But then I remember Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, like singing the praises of the solo mode. And I guess that must have been in the box I had, but I don't think at that time that I went towards solo modes, because I was generally playing in a store with other people. So it didn't make sense to look towards those.
I'm sorry, you know better than anybody that even a solo game, just bring Larry in, let's do it together. And
Man, I'll tell you, we had the greatest time. So if people don't know what Logan's talking about, you can go back on the channel and you can watch, which this is actually the way. So we should set the whole thing up, I guess. Was I met you at Con of Heroes, speaking of Marvel Champions.
Nope.
And then you were able to set us up with a demo of Victorum at Gen Con 2022. And I said, hey, can my buddy Larry come? Which I think maybe you had seen some of the videos or whatever. And I think we were one of the first demos you gave.
The first.
And Larry has quite the energy. Like, he is quite the person to play with. He has energy. He's smart. He's savvy. And for whatever reason, him and I played great together. So we were playing the whole game with two people, like, seamlessly. Like, it was never, this is your role, stay out of my lane. There was none of that, except we all know that Larry rolls way better than I do. And it's unbelievable. And if you go back, it was a long stream. But there is one where he's like, can I roll all four? I'll just get all four. And he rolls them and hits all four successes. And then it's like, Brandt, you roll because we need 3 misses. I roll, we get 3 misses. Like, he calls his shots left and right. So anyway, that was a really fun part. That's how I first got introduced to Victorum. And it was my favorite game coming out of Gen Con. It was just so good. So talk to us about where Victorum came from. What do Hoplomacus and Victorum mean? Do you know?
Yeah, so the Hoplomacus is a gladiatorial type, basically. It was an actual, unit or type of fighter, style of fighter.
Sure.
And Victorum, oh gosh, you're putting me on the spot here, and I don't actually remember.
I mean, it's obviously got a base in victory.
Right. I think it's Latin for like victorious warrior or something along those lines.
For sure.
And it sounds cool to say.
It does.
So no, Hoplo was really where they started, but Chip Theory as a company didn't. I don't even want to say big time, because I don't even know if we've hit the big time, as it were, until recently. But didn't really get on most people's radars until after the Hoplo games and Too Many Bones. So for those who don't know, Too Many Bones is their fantasy IP. It's got these little characters called Gearlocks. Again, very solo forward, also plays co-op. And for whatever reason, because it's an odd game, it's a dice building RPG adventure, it resonated with people on a level nothing had through the Hoplo line up to that point. That one caught fire on Kickstarter when it came out and really propelled the entire company forward. And it had, it had better art, it had better graphics. And I mean, all of that has continued to improve since then, but it was a marked step up from the Hoplo games, which were, 2 guys trying to piece it together themselves with what they knew about graphic design, with, copyright-free artwork that they could just use. Like, I don't think there was an artist for any of the Hoplo games originally. So Too Many Bones put them on the map. And from there, it was, Too Many Bones, kind of returning to that a few times. There was Cloudspire, there was Burn Cycle, all these other projects that they did. And Hoplo was kind of lingering in the back of their head. It was hey, this is where we started. But as things have gone along, it's not really up to our standards anymore. Like, you show it to people at a con, they're like, I don't really want to look at that. Like, this over here, Cloudspire looks so nice.
Right,
Why is that so ugly and weird? And there was this just desire to bring it up to speed. And then I actually couldn't tell you much about this next part because I wasn't there. I came on afterwards. But somewhere along the way, the desire to do Victorum, like, hey, let's also do something new. Like, we want to give it a new coat of paint, but we also want to do something new for our fans in this world that we've created. And, the idea for this big solo adventure started to evolve. And it was kind of a risk too. Up to this point, solo has been something we've focused on, but it wasn't something we did exclusively. Like saying, hey, here's going to be this $150 game that is only for one player. There was a big question mark there. Like, there was a lot of doubt. Like, okay, this will do okay, but I don't know if this will be a big hit or anything. And then when it hit, I think it was our best non-Too Many Bones campaign, maybe to date. It did close to 1 million. and kind of exceeded everybody's expectations. And,
wait, was that campaign, I apologize for interrupting, was that campaign with Remastered?
It was, but Remastered was also, I don't want to say forgotten, but we wanted to make sure the campaign was Victorum facing. Like, hey,
okay, got
it. Campaign is for Victorum. Also, there's this other thing that you can get. Okay. So the messaging on that was a little bit muddled. I think if we did it again, we'd probably do it differently. So Remastered, I think a lot of people are just discovering Remastered now. Like, hey, there was this campaign. Wait, what's this Remastered box? And Remastered is very much, that's the Code of Paint update. That is, we're taking losses from Rise of Rome, from all these other things, and we're kind of polishing them. We're tweaking the rules to make them tighter. We're redoing all the graphics, all the art, and putting them all in one box. Like, this is Hoplomacus' greatest hits brought up to 2022 chip theory standards. But because it's kind of the old stuff made new and not the brand new thing, the campaign was all about Victorum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. So I wanted to ask about like why the solo only, but I realized that Remastered was also there being made. So I assume that was part of the idea, was we realized this is going to be solo only. So then kind of just quickly going over Remastered for people. So Remastered captures those other elements of the game, right? The multiplayer, the PvP.
Yes.
So does Remastered have co-op in it?
Yes. So Remastered is that buffet I was talking about. So there are 2 really robust solo modes. So there's the Titans, which is kind of like, it's different. It's more complex, but it's kind of like one-shotting Scions. Like, you're going in against this powerful Titan. They have this reference card. They roll a bunch of dice that have triggers. It's similar to the Scions, but more in depth. So you have that as a solo mode, but you can also co-op that. Then you also have what's called Onslaught mode, where you fight a band of immortals that are not as complex, but they're very tough, and you're trying to defeat 6 of them in a row, which again is a solo mode that can be played co-op. Then there's PvP. Then there's co-op PvP. Then there's 4-player free-for-all PvP. Like, it's a little bit of everything. And
it's a box of chocolates.
It's a box of chocolates, and there's integration too. Like, you can take units from Remastered, dump them in Victorum, vice versa. There's ways to kind of take each game to make the other game a little bigger and a little better, if that's your taste.
Cool. So let's dig in. First, we'll start with the quality and the presentation. I mean, I feel like you were saying, with how Hoplo just didn't feel like it was meeting those expectations anymore. I mean, Chip Theory does this. So when you mentioned Too Many Bones, I kind of chuckled to myself, because I remember a Gen Con where a friend said, hey, can you find this Too Many Bones in this Chip Theory games company? And I was like, what does Chip Theory mean? And the booth wasn't the booth that you see now. The structure that you basically can't miss. If people haven't been to a convention, you essentially can't miss a Chip Theory booth. It's a large structure. It's very clear. It's a rolled out flooring. Yeah, it's really incredible. And it wasn't that then. It was a table for Too Many Bones. But the chips blew me away. I totally understood why this was called Chip Theory Games. And I feel like not only was Too Many Bones gameplay wise a big moment, but I think it was that production of those chips and what everything looked like, and like, this is how everything's running, which Hoplo did have, to be fair, but it really, for whatever reason, hit. And you've got the same thing here. So in Victorum, you've got this, it's plastic, but it's like a marble stand that holds everything for you. And the mat, and I'm not a playmat person. I mean, I do play my games on playmats, and I stream. I try to have a playmat because it kind of helps with that look. But you lay this out, and it literally holds everything, including the chip containers. Like, it's all right there for you. I think it's only the prowess cards that get laid off to the side. And honestly, they end up piled next to my chips. But they have a spot.
As you earn most of them.
Even the dice just have a look. They have that kind of Roman look to them, right? And just a solid production, which I know I got to roll those metal dice, which are gorgeous. And whatnot. But so just kind of that quality production element, these mats that you take out and you flip them over. It's just really easy to find everything, well thought out in terms of holding and containing everything. And a space to even put the regional rules, right? For each region you're in, what are the rules?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's stuff you want to comment on, kind of in the process, the developing process.
Well, it's funny. It was a journey to get there. If you go back and watch our very first live stream where we're showing off any aspect of Victorum, and this is years ago, mind you, we have a piece of cardboard that is, I forget how deep, but about the depth the mat ended up, maybe a little deeper, but like 3 or 4 feet wide. It's massive. And the original plan, the thing that Adam and I were pushing for, was for the little world map that you see at the bottom. That was going to be the whole map, like blown up. So you're traveling along and you're utilizing this whole space of the map. And then, there were some other things going on, but that being where we started to where we ended up was an incredibly huge journey. Okay. It was pointed out multiple times, like, hey, this is interesting, but it's going to kill the game for some people because it's too massive. It won't fit on their table. It's not utilizing the space the best way. At the time, we had Andrew Navarro working for the company, and he was kind of the most direct voice saying, hey, scrap this map idea. It's not that important. Make a console that really speaks to the solo gamer. And that's part of where this being a solo-only experience speaks to those design choices. Like, a lot of the stuff that you talked about resonates so well because it's directed to one point. You're sitting here and the whole experience is catered to this point right here. If you have another player on the other side or players circling around, you just can't have that clarity and directness. The stadium seating, it's cutting somebody off if there's another player behind them.
Right.
Like, it being solo really fed into just how gorgeous and bespoke it ended up being and feeling to that player.
So in terms of mechanisms and things, I think there's so many clever mechanisms. So just so people know, we did a review video. I gave the game a 9 out of 10. So I'm not here to pull any punches, or I guess the reverse. Like, I'm gushing about the game and I'm excited to talk to Logan about it. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of really clever mechanisms. And so the first one I think that stands out is you have these 3 decks of cards in front of you: the bloodshed events, the opportunity events, the sporting events. They get randomized, but you know what you're going to see, which to thematic gamers, I'm not sure what the term is, to some gamers who randomness is cool, they'd like to travel, but thematically, it was really what I want to say. It makes sense that you would know, oh, if we travel to this city, this is the event that's going on.
Yep.
So you get to know what event you're getting into and what's going to happen, and you can plan around that, right? And then, of course, tied in with that is this spectating, which, of course, isn't called resting. It's called spectating to make it a little more thematic, where you can kind of, oh, we're going to see that event and discard it, and then kind of set up for, like, since some time passed, we're going to wait for another event to happen. I mean, that part that sets up that feeling of control to a player. Like, I have some control over what's happening to me, right?
That amount of control was hugely important to us. Like, it's a game predicated on rolling dice. Like, at the heart of it, it is a combat game where you are rolling dice and you might just get completely screwed by the way those dice roll. You know this as well as anybody. Sometimes the dice are not your friend. You can roll 4 blacks and just get 4 blanks, and then the rival rolls yellows and they get all hits. So knowing that from the start, this is where we kind of had this leg up. We could see what Hoplo was at its core. In building this campaign structure around it, one of the big things that we tried to keep in mind the whole time was, how can we give players more and more layers of control and forethought and planning to mitigate these dice? Like, one of the complaints I do see from people is, like, there's no dice mitigation. You roll and your hits are your hits. And I don't like games without dice mitigation. That's fine. It might not be for them.
Yeah.
But I would argue the dice mitigation, while not specifically applied to the dice, the mitigation, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is built around that. It's built on you being able to look ahead and go, okay, this event is next. Interesting. I'm in this region, so this is the arena I'll be fighting in.
Right.
That's the unit that's going to come out from this region, because I don't know if you mentioned the unit stacks for all the different regions are also facing forwards. So you're sitting there going, well, I'm in the new Argonaut region, and that Secutor is going to be the first unit out. So I can look at him and look at those skills that he's got and plan, well, gosh, I think I can take this fight. I also have this tactic in my camp. Like, it is a game of planning and looking ahead and layering. It's not a game to shoot from the hip. Like, if you just go in guns blazing, go, hey, I'm just going to take everything, I'm going to attack, I'm not going to plan ahead, you're going to lose in the first act. And it will not be a very satisfying experience.
Yeah, even when you draw random units from the bags, they get laid out and you see this is going to be the next unit. This is where it's going to come in. This is going to be the next. Like, the AI is very apparent what it's going to do. It's not trying to hide anything from you, right?
Right.
It is going to put this condition on here if we move here. And so suddenly not only what units do I put out, but where do I stand becomes part of it, and what are the elements of that arena.
And even as the combat unfurls, it's that AI you're talking about. You're looking, they're in play. They have a very simple set of priorities, like, hey, they want to do this. If they can't, then they do this. If they can't, then they do this. You know what they're going to do. Like, the only variable really is how are those dice going to roll. So you're planning for that as much as possible. And even with the dice, you have odds that you can kind of plan for, like, okay, it's likely that this is the number of hits that I'll get. But there's a lot you can plan and anticipate for and really use the AI's priorities against itself. Like, it is about trying to sucker the rival into being suboptimal in any way you can.
So the next clever mechanism that I think of that makes the campaign structure feel so strong is when you battle units, when you battle rival units, you're generally pulling from a bag, but you're taking one, as you were talking about, from the local region. And then at the end, unless you recruit that unit, it goes into the bag. So everything you're fighting is going into that bag, and that bag is getting more diverse, more complex, more unknown. And those people that you fought and presumably beat often are like, I want a second chance. I want to come back to fight you again. And I can't tell you how fun that part is, like knowing that all this stuff is going in the bag and that's changing. And later on, you get things where it's like, look in the bag and recruit a unit. Like, and you're like, oh my gosh, I get to choose from all these, that bag plays such a key part rather than just here's a random draw.
Yep. There's kind of 3 scaling triggers in the game, but I'm going to ignore Bane's for right now.
Sure.
The 2 main ways the game scales with you, because you're getting stronger as the game goes, your hero is getting better, your camp is getting better. The 2 things that are happening in the game is pretty much on a straight line, the bag is getting stronger. Every event you take, unless you recruit somebody, pretty much always a new unit's going into that bag to make the bag more diverse, more challenging, a little bit more random. But also you have your act modifiers. So each of the 4 acts you play has a new modifier added to it to make it more difficult. And I think where these 2 really come together in a fun way is the bag gives you that kind of straight line vertical scaling. Like, the game is always getting just a little bit harder, a little bit more interesting, a little bit different. It's not like a vertical wall. It's just a tiny bit at a time. It's a drip feed. And then the acts happen in chunks. So when you go from one act to the next, the game goes from here to here. And then the next act from here to here. And it goes in chunks, but you're always getting stronger. So suddenly it's difficult, but it's getting easier. So you have these little gameplay loops. Each act is kind of a loop on its own, where it starts off punishing, but you feel yourself get stronger throughout. And ideally, if things are going well, by the end of the act, you're not struggling too much anymore because you've gotten stronger. You've gone through that journey and you're ready for the next act where it jumps up again. But I love the way those 2 work together.
Yeah, and then so we were alluding to the like the different types of events and fighting. Even you can get those opportunities, which suddenly you have a goal, right? It's giving you a mini goal, and some of the best part about adventure games, especially. So this just brings in a splash of that adventure with these opportunities where it's like, hey, if you can put your hero into battle first and they take no damage, then you can go get a prowess card. So suddenly you're like, that's on your radar. Your plan might, oh, wait a second, hold on. This was our plan to loop around this way. But if we loop here, we could go fight this event and we could achieve that opportunity. So it really gives you that choice. But in addition, the sporting events versus the bloodshed events, it's so neat because in bloodshed, as it says, you can die. Specifically, your allies can die, the things in your camp. But in a sporting event, they can't die. So you're playing Capture the Flag, you're playing King of the Hill. So the idea is they get knocked out, right? They're out, whatever the rules are of that game, they're out, but they're not dead. Right. So you can kind of use them as pawns in those ones. But in the bloodshed events, then they become like kin. You're like, wait a second, I don't want to lose these. I don't want to throw them out there. So where did that part of the development come in? The idea to have events where you could lose your, I'm sorry, what is the name? Is it just allies?
Yeah. Basically, your camp units, your allies.
Camp units. Okay, yeah. Versus where you were kind of just playing a game and they would come back to you.
I think that came. I want to say that emerged thematically just as we were going. I think we knew early on we wanted sports and we wanted just regular combats, and that was twofold. The sporting types came out of Origins. They were a thing that kind of existed. They were fine for this, but there was like a King of the Hill map. I forget now what it was called. It's what is now the Kunlun map. That map by a different name was in Origins and had kind of a King of the Hill sort of thing. And there was something like Capture the Flag. And I really liked those. I found those interesting because they made you approach those battles in different ways. So it was like, hey, let's roll these in. We'll have these different sport types, which also, it's a long campaign. Like you're doing a lot of events. Having those different goals and different types really keeps it fresh as you go, which was one of the things we tried to be mindful of the whole time was how do we keep this diverse and interesting? And part of that is just things intersecting. Like, hey, this arena with this event is very different than this arena with this event, or this arena with this event. Those combinations make things very different, but your combat goals also helped keep that fresh. And once we had kind of embraced like, hey, we're having this set of sports and then we're having these to the death battles, kind of saying it out loud made us go, well, if these are to the death battles or bloodshed or lethal, then these sports probably should not be that. They should be something a little bit different than that. And those kind of, diverged a little bit in the development. Although,
so the other
figuring out how to keep players from just going into sports and killing everybody was definitely a challenge for a while. Because I remember early on there was a number of people playing it going, well, I just want to defeat everybody. This is easier. This is how I want to play. And there's no punishment for doing this. And we kind of sat back and went, that's true. If you build your camp just to be an efficient killing machine, then of course you're going to do that every time. And part of the reason for sports to exist was to make sure you as the player are being flexible. If you just have a bunch of deadly units in your camp, you may not be very good at the quick ones like get in, get out, capture the flag, or the sturdy ones, stand here and hold the hill. And part of the goal is make sure you're flexible through this long campaign, and players were not doing that. They were building their camp one set way, murdering everything. And this was actually Adam Carlson, one of his big, great ideas later in the development was the Tribune. We were butting up against this, and he came up with the idea of, hey, what if they have a champion too, who the locals like to come out and cheer for, and you're punished for defeating them. You can do it if you want.
They throw rocks at you. Is that what it is?
They throw rocks at you. They are not going to be happy.
If you defeat their champion, you could still win, but they throw rocks at you and you walk out of there with 1 health.
And that went a huge, that essentially solved the whole thing for us, because suddenly it fed into the risk reward. It wasn't saying you can't do this. It was saying you can do this, but are you sure? Like it's going to cost you. And it still lets players steer into certain play styles if they want. Like you might go for a build where your hero can recover health pretty easily, or you don't mind your hero having 1 health and just saying, hey, I can defeat the Tribune and it doesn't matter because I'm already at 1 health. I'm not losing anything. But it makes you think about it a little more, and it encourages you to engage with the sport events the way they're meant to be engaged with.
Nice. So then the hero leveling is the other part that I'm thinking of. And that's not, I would say that's not particularly unique. I mean, there are so many campaign games where your main character levels. That is right. That is the idea. What's really neat is the kind of diversity in the characters. So you've got Kraken Lance, who's kind of like an assister and is giving all his units bonus dice. You've got the Parthian that we did in our playthrough, who's standing at range and is just saying, I'll stand here and I'll just shoot at you. And then if you come close, I'll come piling in with my fury aura and hit you down, and I'll get a volley of characters that are gonna throw things at you. We're just gonna stand back here. And then I played off camera. I played Stygiana. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Stygiana. And I was like, boy, how is a melee character gonna work? I wasn't sure. And once I figured out she can come in, not be dazed, so she can kind of take the first turn. She gets the upper step, the upper hand. And then her ability to like retaliate and be agile, so she ignores all the abilities of the other characters. She really became a powerhouse. She was actually, I felt like, boy, dice is just the best way to go. But with her, I went health. I just got big, strong, and healthy, and was like, you could just hit me, and I'll just play a bunch of matches, and then I'll just take one to spectate. Or she actually starts to heal as she comes in. So I put her in just to heal, and then use my other units to win, just as a way to heal her up, but keep going with the season. Right? It's kind of like the star basketball player who's there on the bench but isn't playing a lot of minutes to get ready.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because you kind of identified like the scaling system, in terms of the hero's base are pretty basic. You can upgrade their health, you can upgrade their leadership, which is how many units they can have in their camp. You can upgrade their dice. Like, this is basically it. Those are the things you can change about your hero. But they also have their prowess cards, which are their unique little abilities that are unique hero to hero. Each hero has a little set of, I believe, 10 prowess cards that only they have and only they can unlock as they play. And not only are those different, but it's what you were just saying. They encourage you to upgrade your hero's base stats a little differently. Like, your first instinct is, I'm just going to upgrade my attack dice and make sure that my hero slaps the hardest. But certain prowess cards, certain hero builds suddenly have you going, oh gosh, maybe I want to upgrade my health instead so that I can tank for different reasons. Or maybe I want a really big camp so I can get all the units of these types that my prowess cards incentivize.
Right.
I'm really happy to hear you were tapping into that, because I think that's where it gets really interesting, is when you start to look at those different paths you can take, because it is modest. It's 10 prowess cards. It's not a giant skill tree like something like Too Many Bones can offer.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other part is just the incremental. Like, we talked about the different, like the bloodshed events and the opportunities and the sporting, but each one has like kind of a choice. And so based on what you're doing, you're getting that. And you kind of alluded to before, like the game's getting a little easier because you're getting these incremental bonuses. You're not waiting like, okay, I'm going to fight a whole bunch of stuff, and then when I fight the Primus, I'm going to level up. Yep. So it gives you all these little incremental incentives to go about. So, yeah, those were some of the things that I thought were really a big part of it. I think another huge thing for solo players that is a huge plus to me, because I have cats. Man, and I'm sure there are many solo players that have cats and know the catastrophic events, pun intended,
I see what you did there.
that can be brought upon us as gamers. But it's so easy to put away. It's so easy to store. I mean, obviously it's the solo nature of the game that's going to lend to that, right? But for me, I was lucky. My cats aren't too bad. I was able to just take the little gold disc where you travel, snap a picture on my phone, pop that in my box. But honestly, even just taking the 3 decks of cards, throwing them in, and closing the covers, you're done. That's all you have to do. My pencil will be gone in the morning. The cats will get the pencil. That's their favorite part.
For me, it was dice. I can't leave loose dice out. I set up Remastered when I got my copy not too long ago. I walked away for like 3 minutes to check on something, and they managed to lose one of my dice already. So I'm down 1 Remastered die because I can't trust my cats.
But in all reality, it's so fast to put away. So the idea that like you play an act, you put it away, you bring it back out, because I imagine I'm learning this more and more, how much people don't like setting up games.
Mm-hmm.
I like learning games and I like setting up games, and I have to realize that is unique. But it's so fast to just bring it back out and play another act and put it away. And it's interesting. I have a lot here. Sorry.
No,
it's about 2 hours per act. And I agree for our first play. Again, Larry and I whiz streaming, playing multiple, playing with two of us. It was something like 9 hours, maybe 10 for us to play. But when I came home to play on my own with no cameras, just playing, boom, 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 here we go. My second one was about 5.5 hours. It wasn't the 8 hours that it kind of is at. Like, it was way faster once I knew abilities and everything.
I was gonna say there's things you internalize. Like the other big one is just how to do the rival priority checks. I think that bogs down a lot of people on their first play. There are a couple of mistakes I think a lot of people make. And then another part of it is I think a lot of people bring assumptions to how the rival is going to act. And when the game treats those a little differently and doesn't steer into them, it throws people for a loop. It's like, well, wait, I can attack this. Why would I move? And it's like, well, it'll move because it can get to something it wants to attack more. Like there are a couple of little things that once you internalize those, you can fly through these events. Like you can sit down and do some combats in 10 minutes or less. And they start to move at a faster clip.
And we talked about this a lot in our play, but honestly, just the way to increase difficulty is you could play the AI. You could say, I'm going to make this as hard as possible on me. Now, I'm not saying like you should do that and break the rules, but it is a way to make the game more complex. You could say, well, if I were the AI, this is what I would do. I would go after and I would kill this character that's about to kill these characters to win, right? So you could do something like that. Yeah, it sounds like I'm telling people to break the rules. That's my point. I'm just saying where they're interpreting, oh, this is what I think I would do, so that's what the AI does, but it doesn't. It favors, I want to get on that chariot because the chariot gives King of the Hill points or whatever.
And I think the thing to remember for folks is it is the way that it is for specific reasons. It's there for balance reasons. It's there to let the player take advantage of the AI in some cases.
Yeah.
Like the chariot is a great example of going, well, I'm going to step back so they jump on the chariot instead of attack me. Then I'm going to rush forward and attack it. It's there to give you that decision space, which isn't to say don't do what you're talking about. It's just there to say like, hey, if you do that, it may be too hard. Like you may not be winning the game anymore if suddenly the AI is playing as optimally as a player would.
Right. So the last thing would be the Scion difficulty. We were talking about this a little bit. So it feels like one of the places you really see the spread of difficulty, which the game gives you, it has 3 different modes, is when you get to that final Scion fight, having blessings is a very strong leg up against certain Scions. The variety, so the one at Gen Con, we fought the Hydra, and it was very hard. The Hydra was a really cool fight. On our stream, we fought It's Cab Bane, and we didn't end up having any Banes, and it was kind of a pushover with a long-range character that didn't have to get near it and whatnot. But we played on, I believe it's Chosen difficulty is the lowest. And then I played Calliope, which you told me there was an errata for, so we'll see that piece, which people can find on the Chip Theory Games website. But you could definitely see kind of 3 different levels of those, and I played on, I don't know the mid-level difficulty.
Let's see, Valiant, I think.
Valiant, where I didn't really have as many blessings going in, so suddenly so you'll really see it on those Scion fights is where you're going to find the scaling of difficulty I found.
Yeah, I would very much agree with that. The interaction with Banes, and the Banes have a lot to do with the Scion fights, is very different from Chosen to Valiant, and even from Valiant to Fearless, because you only have 1 blessing on Fearless mode. Being able to not gain, basically, on the easy difficulty, you have a lot of blessings. Blessings mean you don't have to worry about dying as much because your blessing will swoop in and save your life. On the harder difficulties, if you don't have those or you're more worried about spending them, you will be more inclined to spectate. Spectating is basically where you skip an event. We mentioned this a little bit earlier. You heal your hero up, which is why you would do it, instead of spending a blessing, which would also heal your hero. You would spectate, but it gains you Scion influence, which gains you Banes. which is a roundabout way of saying that when you're playing on Valiant or Fearless, you are going to be taking on a lot more Banes than you do on Chosen because of the blessings, because you're more inclined to spend the blessings to save you from gaining Scion influence, even unwittingly. So especially if you're pretty good at tactical games, you may be breezing through Chosen mode and just slapping that Scion at the end going, yeah, I'm really good. And you are. What that means is you're ready for the next mode. You're ready for it to kick up and cut your resources in half a little bit, and have to make those close decisions that much closer. Which I want to say one thing here is not to say don't play Chosen mode. Like the 3 modes exist.
For sure.
Because there are 3, there are different types of players out there, and some players will want to always play Chosen, and that's great. It's there for a very specific type of fun. I play Chosen sometimes when I want to come out of the gate swinging. I want those 3 starting prowess cards. I just want to feel smart. Sometimes I'll play Chosen.
And even so I'm going to pass my copy just temporarily. I'm keeping my copy, but I'm passing it to Larry. He wants to play through a campaign. And what he was saying he's going to do is take all of the heroes and play 1 act with all of them. And I could see doing that on Chosen, because then he can pick the one that he wants to do his campaign with. He just wants to get experience with each of them. And I was like, oh, that's a really, I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, you could play each one, whether it is 1 act or 6 weeks or something, right? And he's going to play through each of them. And I could see doing something like that for Chosen, because you get that variety, which is a huge part of the fun, right? You're not worried about, oh, this is going to be as hard as possible, but like, which of the heroes do I align with? And I can kind of figure that out. So I thought that was an interesting take.
I like that.
I was like,
that.
That's a cool idea. That's a good way to kind of present it to people and be like, don't go in for that full campaign. And then once you have a feeling, maybe that's where you step up your difficulty, or maybe that's where you say, this is the character I'm going to go with. I do like the suggestion as Kraken Lance as the first one, but since so many people did it, I was like, I want to pick a different character for our playthrough so people could see something different,
So people have asked, like, why Kraken Lance and why Tautier is the recommended starting Scion. And the reason is not because either of them is easier for the game. Like, Kraken Lance is not the strongest hero. Tautier is far from the easiest to beat Scion. Right. Tautier is a beast. He's probably one of the harder ones. They're recommended because they're straightforward. Like, the goal of that starting game is, hey, understand the rules and succeed just enough. So Kraken Lance starts in Atlantis. Atlantis is one of the easier arenas to wrap your head around. There's a trident, grab the trident, throw the trident, boom, deal damage. It's pretty straightforward compared to some of the others. So it's more about easing players in than necessarily giving them an easier campaign.
It's that darn hill one. Laosian or something? What is that? Lamosha. That is the one. That's the one that crushed us. They run up to the top of the hill. You're at the bottom, just trying to hold on for dear life.
There with arrows just raining down on you.
I needed somebody more with a shield or something, so I'll have to try that one.
I will say that is one of the arenas that really rewards having displacement. So there's a set of skills in the game that I feel like don't get much love. Stuff like shove or hurl. I think those are the two that spring to mind that let you push units around, yours or the opponent's units.
Right.
That's a good one where you're like, you're on the peak. I want to be on the peak. Let me just push you off.
Push you to the other side.
Now I'm in the best position and I'm shooting arrows down on your head.
Nice. Cool. Well, the game is fantastic. I love it tremendously. But as gamers do, is there more?
Yes. So I think even before Victorum had come out, like we were talking like, okay, where's this going to go? What do we want to do with this? Expansions, another game, like what is this? And bearing in mind that all of this is subject to change, like big pin in this for a couple of reasons, not least of which that in just a week and a half, a little thing called Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era is happening. And depending on how that goes, it could change our company outlook for the next 2 or 3 years. Bearing that in mind, right now, the plan is this fall to do a campaign for Hoplomacus expansion content.
Okay.
And the plan has been, instead of like trickling out a little bit over ages, to do a big campaign for a big collection of expansion. Like, hey, here are a bunch of modules that you can add to your game in different places in different ways. All at once, this is everything Victorum, boom, you're done. So I won't say exactly how many. We have quite a number, but I can tell you about one or two if you are interested in hearing about them.
Yes.
So some of them are just things that we wanted to add, and others are things that people asked for, and we said, yeah, okay, we can do that. One of the big ones is arena variety, because as you travel through a set region, the events are changing, the units are changing, but you're playing on the same arena with the same set of rules, often 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 times in a row.
Right.
So the amount of variability comes down. It's still there through other elements, but it comes down a little bit because that arena is static. So where this module stands right now, it would be a new set of arena sheets where each sheet would be the same arena with different rules on each side. So suddenly there's the original way to play New Argo and the new play to play New Argo. And as you travel through, this would just flip every time you move. So you would be alternating modes along with the event and the units and everything else.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So I think that's an exciting one. And it's just fun from our side to come up with new rules for the arenas, because it's a challenge. Like, they're very compact. You can do very specific things, and you want them to both be dynamic, but not game breaking, not set up in such a way that, like, oh, this is impossible, or oh, this is too easy. Like, hitting that middle ground of really interesting but balanced is really tough on the arenas. Like, they're probably the biggest challenge in terms of design, I would say.
Right.
Let's see.
I love that, though. Yeah, just breaking up that. I mean, the game does try, like, this. One of the focuses is obviously not to create monotony, but if there is any, it is a little bit of that. And so it just gives you that option. And I love that it just flips back and forth. So you're just switching up what you're doing.
Yeah, I'd say the overall goal with the expansion content right now is not to add new mechanics or anything too drastically new to the game. It's just you kind of flesh it out in the way that it already exists. So it's not like saying, hey, here's this completely new mechanic. You can do this. Here's a whole new sport type that you can do with a whole new set of rules. We don't want to dump new rules on people. It's not the most complex game we put out, but there's a lot to it already. It's more just bringing some newness and some more variety to the ways the game exists already. I would say the most new thing that we have planned right now, and again, pin in this, it could change, but right now we are planning we don't have a name for it exactly, but basically a deck of Primus events. Okay. So right now, when you get to a Primus, you have to go to the book, you have to find the setup, it's static, so it basically says, here's your lineup in Act 1, 2, 3, 4. It's another area where there could be a little more variety, there could be a little more intrigue. So the idea would be to treat the Primus fights exactly like the other events, where you have a little deck, you can see what Primus event is coming, but they're all unique. They all bring a little bit of a spin, just like the Bloodsheds or the Sports. Like, hey, here's the weird rule for this Primus fight. You have a whole act to plan for it, but here's where this is going to be different. And then additionally, it cuts down on the work a little bit. You're not flipping through the manual, trying to find that setup. Again, it's right on a card, facilitating that solo player experience.
Nice. I'm sorry. There's something outside my window, so I apologize that I looked 2 times. I'm totally with you, but it like freaked me out for a second. So I had a moment, if I was looking behind me, it was like some kind of noise behind me, and I was like, I'm in my basement, so it was like, that sounds great. Yeah, switching up those Primuses, because they are basically just a clash with them, but that'll give you some kind of goals that you could have there instead, which is interesting because Primuses could then have personality, right? Like a Primus could be like, oh, I'm the warrior of this, like balancing on this thing, or what? I don't know. I'm coming up with stuff. These are free ideas. But whatever it is, right? This is how we test might, or we test Victorum in this region. You know, it kind of gives you that feeling of it.
Yeah, just to bring a little bit more flavor to those events, and also just kind of streamline the gameplay process a little bit. And then the last thing that I'll mention, just because I know this is the thing I've seen asked a lot. Okay. We are planning. Like we have stuff designed for this. an expansion module that would let you play all the remastered heroes as heroes in Victorum, which basically it's a set of prowess cards for each of those.
Right.
Maybe a few chips here and there, if you know what I mean. But pretty modest expansion on that front. But we are planning on facilitating that.
Gotcha. Oh yeah, that'll be great for people that have that, and then it's a good way to get a wider variety of heroes into the game. Awesome. Well, all that stuff sounds great. Yeah, we'll look for that. You're saying possibly this fall?
Right now, it's penciled in for this fall, but basically our entire plan for the rest of the year, like everything that we have on the books is pending what Elder Scrolls does in just over a week.
Gotcha. And we'll just give people the date for Elder Scrolls 2. So that's going up on crowdfunding?
Yes, actually, what is the date? I want to say it's the 20. Let me see. Let me pull up the GameFound page.
So it'll be on GameFound.
Yes, it's going to be on GameFound. It's like just over a week. 10 days and 23 hours from now. So that's going to be, I want to say the 28th.
All right.
Yeah.
So people can check out that as well from Chip Theory Games on GameFound.
Actually, if folks want to look at the GameFound preview page, there's a lot of stuff on it. Some of it's a little out of date, but there's some very cool artwork. It's not using graphics from the games or anything like that. It's all original art from our art team. It's gorgeous. It is looking so good. But yeah,
awesome.
So the rest of the year is kind of depending on what happens with that. Because if it blows up, if it is absolutely even larger than we anticipate, we may have more work on our plates because we like to do stretch goals. We like to add stuff, and sometimes we have an idea of what that's going to be, but sometimes the games do really well and blow past our expectations, and we have to scramble to add a bunch of new content that suddenly needs designing and developing and play testing, and it pushes our schedule a little bit. So
and the Elder Scrolls is based off of like a small little unknown video game.
Yeah, I think I want to say it's like a little Steam puzzle game. Yeah. No, just massive IP that we're super excited about.
Skyrim and Morrowind, and I don't even know if I could name them all. There's been a lot of Elder Scrolls.
Elder Scrolls Online has a huge player base. Love that one. Yeah, it's exciting, and it's been a long time coming.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Logan. This was great. It was awesome to talk to you and to hear more about Victorum. If people haven't had a chance, I highly recommend it. Watch our playthrough, even see playing it with 2 people, I thought was a ton of fun. So I suggest that, even though it is a kind of quote unquote solo only game, I thought it worked great. If you have a friend that you play games with super well.
I think it's a good idea. Like in some ways it cuts down on the mental overhead. With 2 people paying attention to it, you are less likely to miss little things, to forget about the event modifier or this or that. I was seeing it with you and Larry's playthrough, where you would start doing a thing and then one of you would go, oh, wait, we have to do this, or we forgot to apply this.
Right.
In some ways,
you don't feel like you have to go back because the other person remembers.
Yep. So
it works really well. Awesome. Well, the last thing I will ask you, Logan, is to let us know for our Marvel Champions fans out there, which of course I am one. So what is just one of your favorite Marvel Champions heroes so far released, and one favorite villain scenario that you have?
So I think, as far as heroes go, the one that I have most recently had an absolute blast with was SP-DR.
Yep.
Spider. The robot mech alternate universe Spider with the girl inside. I looked at that on paper when it was spoiled and said, oh gosh, this is going to be another Hulk. Like the penalties so far outweigh the benefits. I don't see how this can be very good. Because, she has a hand size of 4 on one side and 3 on the other, I want to say.
Yeah.
Which is about 2 fewer than any other hero per side on average. And she's a blast. Like, very unique, which I like, but functional, strong, and just super fun to play in different ways. I especially like taking her Venom. I like to play protection, take her Venom ally, get it out with 4 counters on it. So it is basically a 5 attack, 5 thwart.
Nice.
And then just churn through the game with that and use med teams to keep it alive.
That's awesome.
So
what villain scenario are you enjoying?
Oh my goodness. If it's me by myself,
yep,
probably I might go back to Mutagen Formula. Mutagen Formula, it's a classic at this point, but I absolutely love it. And also, I'm not going to lie, playing against villains with that many minions kind of lets you tap into the full array of heroes. Because there are certain heroes like Rocket or Thor that you really don't want to play if you're not playing against a lot of minions.
Sure.
Like, they're doable, but they're not as good. They can't use their full kit. So Mutagen Formula really taps into that. If I have more players, though, if there's 3 of us or 4 of us at the table, nothing's going to beat Kang. Like, Once in Future Kang is so good.
Dividing out and all this, and then like, let me come to yours and help you out because I figured it out.
Like, where
really
are you going to go? Okay, they need help, jump over there. Like, so good.
Yeah, it's dead on. It just feels like a Kang fight, right? They just
it really does. And those are where I really love those, is when you're playing and going, oh, this feels exactly like what it's supposed to. MODOK, the whole MODOK set did a really good job of that too, I think. Although maybe not as good as Kang. Kang is unparalleled.
Nice. Oh, thank you so much, Logan, for your time today. It was a blast talking about Hoplomacus Victorum, so people can check that out. Check out Chip Theory Games and see the other things that Logan and team are working on as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks, everybody, for watching. My name is the Brandt. Until next time, I hope you step into the portal. Bye.